Hi, this is Declan Shalvey, former artist of Moon Knight, and you're listening to Into the Night, the Moon Knight podcast.
Yes, welcome back, Looney listeners. You are listening to Into the Night, the Moon Knight podcast. This is episode 289. You are with your Hyper Rey. Hello, if I can get my words out. And joining me tonight is a very special guest. Look, I counted Sparky about maybe 3 years, I think.
Yeah.
So, I mean, a big welcome, listeners. You're probably wondering who. Sparky Mularkey, welcome back to the show. How you going?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, an absolute pleasure. Looney listeners, we're doing something. Well, this is a segment of ours. If you look up into the night sky, it is a waxing gibbous. And so we are looking at an other side of the moon. And that basically means any of the past or present Moon Knight alumni, we're looking at their other work, just to give loonies a little bit more of a flourish as to what the likes of your favourite Moon Knight writers or artists are up to. And so tonight we'll be looking at Bog Bodies by Declan Shalvey. Now, I am so stoked to have Sparky here because Sparky, I understand that you are a big Declan Shalvey fan.
Yeah, I am. I've been a fan of his work for years now, and I am lucky enough to actually be able to consider Declan a pretty good friend.
That is so awesome. So, I mean, I couldn't resist, as I mentioned, Sparky off air, couldn't resist to ask you to come on board and bring your expertise on Bog Bodies. I mean, it's a great little novel, and we will get to that as well. Also, as well, I'm alluding to the fact that it's been, I think, about 3 years. Sparky, first off, you've supplied one of the very first bare bones for ITK back in the day. You narrated the issue 14, I believe, of the Jeff Lemire run.
Oh my goodness.
Uh,
Yeah, it seems like a
yeah.
lifetime ago, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah. I remember just touching base with you and going, "Oh, look, hi. Would you be keen?" And you're so accommodating because I know on Twitter, you're a great, a big Moon Knight fan, been part of the group for quite a long time, and then shortly after that, Sparky, it's never surfaced. Unfortunately, it's an unfinished opus. We did an Isla Ra. I remember it
Oh,
with
that's
you.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, we started to do it. We had a whole little kind of skit happening at the beginning. This was around the time that my little son Finn was, like a newborn, and so he kind of cried up a storm, and we had to cancel it, which I
Yeah.
felt really bad.
No, that's totally fine. I mean, life really comes at you fast.
Yeah,
We all had a lot going on, so
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because we were talking from memory. We were talking about because you're a fantastic cosplayer. We're
Oh,
talking
thank
about
you.
that, yeah, and how you got into Moon Knight, all that sort of thing. But yeah, I always felt sad that we weren't able to finish it. So maybe who knows? Maybe in the down the track, if you're keen, we can start afresh and do. I still do the Isla Rise, but they're at the mercy of a new moon, I think. So not that common. But when they are, I'd like to have a good old chat with some of the guests. Um, uh,
Alrighty.
yeah, for sure. I mean, it'd be interesting to hear. I think I still have the list of your Isla Ra books. I'll have to dig it up. um, Before any of that, of course, a big thank you to our sponsors, all the patronies. So a big thank you for all your support, as well as our principal sponsors, Drew Toombs, Daniel Doing, and Frank the Think Tank. Also, a big thank you to CLZ Comics by Collectors and Dreamland Comics from Schoenberg, Illinois. So here we are, Sparky, um, here to do an other side of the moon. Before we get going, I mean, I guess I'd like to ask, what kind of draws you to Declan Shalvey's type of writing or art? I mean, predominantly art, right?
Right, yeah. Well, yeah, I think many people know him mostly as an artist, but I think his writing lately has just been really chock full of a sort of, I mean, Declan, he's a really down to earth, humble guy, right? And
Mhm.
I feel like his writing, it has so much of him in it at times, even if the subject matter is something um, a little out of the ordinary in terms of like some of the more supernatural elements of the stories. And like Bog Bodies, for example, is a crime book at its face. Um, so it's not something that many people really deal with in their day to day life, but I feel like Declan's able to um, infuse a lot of the grounded kind of street level, like real world elements in terms of how people act. And of course, like he's one of the most well known Irish artists, I think, in the comic book world. So just seeing a lot of that culture and like Irish flavor in the
Mhm.
writing in a genuine way, like in an authentic way, is just
Mhm.
really enjoyable.
Yeah, it is. It is certainly. I mean, I've loved his art ever since. And for newer Moon Knight fans who might be listening now, who might not be too accustomed to all the runs in Moon Knight, I mean, the link with Declan Shalvey and Moon Knight was that he was part of that seminal run with Warren Ellis of 2014. So much so that a lot of the influences can be seen in the TV show, which just wrapped up. Which, incidentally, Sparky, what did you think of the show, the series?
Oh my goodness. So of course, you know I'm biased, right? Um,
Yeah.
excuse me, sorry. Very early in the morning over here, and I still got that nice morning throat going on. Um, yeah, I am such a fan of the character. So of course, like going in, I was like, all right, I'm sure I'm going to love this show. Like I want it to succeed. I'm here for it. But it really surprised me. I was really impressed. I thought that it took the character in a different kind of direction than I was used to from the comics, but there was still so much of that comic influence in it that I was able to still be surprised and delighted by some of the newer aspects, but also I got to enjoy, as you said, all of the influences, like with Declan Shalvey's character designs and art, and a lot of the stuff from the Jeff Lemire run,
Hmm.
which was one of my favorites. Yeah, I loved it. I thought it was fantastic, and it's just I'm sure everyone on the Moon Knight fandom sphere can uh, agree that it's been just so delightful to see. It's almost it's almost vindicating in a way, you know, to be such a big fan of this character that's been considered so obscure for so long, and now like we can get T-shirts
I
with
know,
them
it's
on, you
crazy.
know, like there's all sorts there's art out there now. People are like really love the character, and it's just been so delightful.
It's crazy. I mean, not only I mean, yeah, the merch, really. I mean, there's a flood of like action figures and Funkos, and we're getting, reprints of all the collections, which is fantastic. And it is a bit surreal, isn't it? That this character that many fans have followed for a long time, or maybe have just come on board, but it's quite a niche character. It's weird that yeah, he's such a big name to him, like Oscar Isaac and
Oh, I
obviously
know.
Disney Plus. It's fantastic. Yeah, there are departures from the comic book, but yeah, it sounds like you took that in your stride, Sparky. Like Stephen Grant and the way that Mister Knight kind of functions in the MCU.
Yeah, I felt that those changes, particularly, of course, with Stephen Grant, added something new to it. And I've been trying my best to kind of view the MCU itself as kind of like the Ultimates in a way, like from the comic
Yeah.
perspective. Like it's a whole other universe, right? So
Mm-hmm.
things can be different, and we can. It's like, oh well, that's just this character, like the version of this character in this world. So like
Yep.
making Stephen Grant based in London, and having that connection between the Mr. Knight persona, the Mr. Knight alter costume connected to Stephen
Yep.
was, I thought, really creative and something that I never would have considered before, but I actually really liked it.
Yeah, it seemed to fit, didn't it? They spoke about it in the Assembled, the making of, and just how it was interesting how Stephen Grant was meant to have the Moon Knight costume and Mark was meant to have the suit, but it just makes sense, like Stephen being
Yeah.
British. Yeah,
Right, yeah, I was
yeah,
trying to imagine what it would have been like if they had kept their original idea, and it
yeah,
does not have the same, like, kinda nice,
yeah.
fit to it. I think that, I'm glad they went with what they went with because I think it suits them very well.
Yeah, me too, as well. And hopefully, touch wood, we get something in the future. Look, I think it's almost a given, and this is being rather arrogant, that we will get like something in the movies, but I'd really love to see another season, like a TV season.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean,
yeah,
yeah, I would be just absolutely flabbergasted if they didn't bring those characters back at least for something. I know
yeah,
a lot of people are uh, very, very keen on having another season, and I understand that if they're going to do that, they don't want to announce anything for a while. I know the show is up for some Emmy nominations, I think.
that's right.
Yeah,
Yes, yeah.
and I know it's in
Which
that like limited. Sorry, go ahead.
mhm. Oh no, no, sorry, go on. It's in that in the
Oh, yeah, I
limited.
think it's in the limited series category or
Yeah.
something, so they can't
Mm,
have multiple seasons, but yeah, we'll see. Maybe they'll do well at the awards ceremony and be
yeah.
motivated, I guess, to give us more.
I like to think that someone is there with their finger over the button, and as soon as Oscar Isaac wins the award, they're going to go, "Yep, green light, season
Oh,
two,
yeah,
season two." So,
absolutely. That's like, yeah, definitely.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, let's hope, Loonies, that Moon Knight, the TV show, both gets its accolades, and we get more content because more is always better than none. Uh, yeah, well, let's get into it, Sparky. This is, as I said, a strange one because it doesn't involve Moon Knight, but it involves a Moon Knight alumni creator. I'd like to maybe afterwards, Sparky, towards the end, just roughly go through because I've just got a couple off the top of my head of Declan's like works, like his creator-owned works. That might be good recommendations for Looney listeners if they want to follow up and look for more Declan Shalvey.
Yeah.
But I know you've probably got some off the top of your head as well. But let's stick to a Bog Bodies. So this was released in May. Sorry, let me start that again. This was released on May 27th, 2020. Oh, what a terrible, weird time the world was living in. And we have Declan Shalvey, writer, Gavin Fullerton, art, Rebecca Nalty on colours, Clayton Cowles, letterer, and Heather Antos, editor. And this is available. I've got my little OGN hard copy of it from Image, and it's also available in digital format if you want to read it on your smart device. Now, Sparky, I haven't asked you beforehand, so I'm going to put you right on the spot. I'm not sure if you still have the prompt sheet handy.
Yeah.
Cool. Would you be able to read? I couldn't really find a total synopsis. I found two similar paragraphs. So if you can read like one or the other, they pretty much sum up the same thing.
Sure, sure. Let's see. All right. After bungling a job for a crime boss, Killian wanders through an ancient bog with a pair of aging assassins in close pursuit. When Killian happens across a woman named Neev, who's covered in blood and claims to have no idea how she ended up so far outside the city, the two become unlikely companions.
Yeah. So pretty short and sweet. Look, I haven't got the whole kind of plot and summary down for you listeners, but don't worry, Sparky and I will be going through this story. now, for listeners that haven't listened to us before, what Sparky and I will do, we'll go through some key moments. I've just listed some things which kind of popped out as the story progressed. And then, we'll get into anything, into more detail, with things such as writing, art, themes, characterizations, and references. I'd love to kind of go through the characters, Sparky, because, there are not hundreds of them. It's a nice little handful of them. So it'd be good to kind of get a summation of how they kind of flesh out. I think Declan does a really good job in developing the characters in such a short amount of time. Um, Finally, Sparky, we'll cap this off with Conishu's rating system. Now, I'm not sure if you had a little read of the rating levels, but we'll cap that off with a score at the end. I'll be surprised at yours. You can probably see mine in the prompt sheet there.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
did get a chance to see the rating system. I love it.
Excellent.
Very on brand. So yeah, I'm excited.
Excellent. Can't thank Conishu enough for that. Before we kick off into any of the key aspects, Sparky, overall, what did you think of Bog Bodies as a whole?
Oh gosh, Bog Bodies. Just brutal and chilling. Very real. It made me, like, when I first read it, I closed the book and I just set it down and just sat there for a little while. Like, wow, like what? And it's one of those stories with the ending, the way it's set up, it just makes you immediately go back and want to kind of rifle through the pages, like, what? Wow, really? Whoa, I did not even look at things like that. Really, it really just impressed me.
I had exactly the same reaction about arriving at the ending. It kind of sits with you a little uncomfortably and ambiguous enough that you kind of go, hang on, is this what I suspect it is? And then you go back and you kind of like, oh my gosh. And I guess that's a sign of a great ending, because it has an impact, because you're kind of like, and you kind of see it. I mean, we'll get to it, but when we see more of Maureen and inside her house,
right.
But it kind of creeps up on you, and then the ending is so somber that you kind of like, oh wow, okay, this is it, and you kind of hit already by what happens to Killian. So, listeners, I enjoyed it as well. I mean, in a nutshell, I thought it was really good. It was very noir and very Irish. I'm sure it has a lot of sayings that are very authentic. I mean, of course, Declan is a local in that regards. But yeah, I mean, if we pick, I don't know, I've got these key moments here, Sparky. So I don't want to. I'll save the last bit as you're alluding to the ending, because that's a really kind of a big moment. The beginning, I think the thing to get things in motion was already pretty good. The language is fast, and it's colorful or foul, shall I say that?
Right.
But this thing about straight away you're misdirected with Killian thinking that he's going to go for another hit or another job, and we're met with Jerry in the boot. So I don't know, what did you think about the establishment of the story kind of in this way?
Oh, I really loved it. I thought it was it tells you a bit about the characters right off the bat, like who they are, like what kind of person they are, with how they speak to each other. It's so delightful to read through the dialogue. Just look at those word bubbles and kind of feel the Irish flavor, just imagining what it sounds like and how it would feel to say. It's so satisfying. And just immediately, like, what, it's like page 4, I think. Wait, it's page 6 when he opens up the hood of the trunk. And it's just like a shock, like, whoa. And then just immediately seeing him in there with the gun in his face, slamming the trunk down, just like Kino, like it just it's so funny to me how this story at its face is very dire. This young man, he thinks he's doing a job and realizes that he's the job. That his good friend, who he's known for a long time, reluctantly has to try to take him out. But having those little moments of almost humor, in
Yes.
a very real way, it's just it adds this level, this complexity, I think, to the mood of the story, because it's very dark, like thematically and also visually. It's at night,
Mm.
out in the middle of nowhere. So with the
Yep.
pages, there's not even stars. Like the background is
Mm.
just black, and I think
Yeah.
that really adds a lot to it.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the art as well in these opening sequences, the art and the coloring, because it is quite sparse. And I mean, I've got here as one of the other aspects. It's like the bog really has a character of its own. It's kind of built up straight away. I think even with the just having a look. Oh, well, maybe it's in the actual synopsis for the story about you read the back of the novel and it's about this guy and he gets he runs into the bog and he gets lost, and so it has this element of you could easily get lost in there, and I thought it's like very much a character of its own because it almost has a really kind of eerie sense to it, and I'm not just saying this because I know what's happened at the end, but it has this element of for one, they dump murdered bodies in there. It's a bit creepy. I guess haunted would be the best kind of thing for it. And the fact that you don't see stars, it's mostly dark. I think it's really great. I think the art is sold really well. Fullerton does a really good job. It's not like Declan Shalvey's work at all, but I think he does really well with the characterizations of the characters, like the
Oh,
facial.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And just to backtrack a little, I totally agree in terms of the bog.
Hmm.
I mean, as you alluded to, the back of the trade paperback,
Hmm.
or the graphic novel. Um, it's described as a desolate bog that has served as burial grounds for unspeakable murder throughout history. And I think there's something about that legacy of being a place that takes things,
Hmm.
like accepts murdered bodies, and even in ancient times, animals and humans that have fallen into the bog, even, and have
Hmm.
just like been trapped there. Um, Bogs, from what I understand, they're kind of like an otherworldly space. There's a lot of
Yeah.
uh, energy just from like knowing the history and sensing, um, what has taken place there, and just the just untold masses of life forms, I guess, that are there.
Yeah.
Um, it's just like a very, uh, as you said, haunting space, that I think just adds so much. Like I don't think a lot of this story would hit the way it does
Hmm.
if it wasn't out in the middle of nowhere in Ireland,
Oh,
at a
definitely.
bog.
Yeah, yeah. It's almost like a really a sinister quality. Like as you were saying, all these bodies um, go in there, and the fact that we see Killian and Neev, they lose their way quickly. It's something that it's almost as if the bog is trying to kind of absorb you. You know what I mean? Like as in
Yeah.
you get lost in it, and then it will just absorb you into itself. So it has this kind of feel to it, which I think is really cool. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It's a great setting that Declan uses. It's a very local thing. So he must know about these things in Ireland, and it's a great setting for crime. You
Oh,
can.
absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. And the art, just sticking with the art again, Fullerton. I'm going to jump a little bit to the art and the what I had with characterization. So I was going to ask you. Let's do like a quick rundown of the characters. Uh, the easiest one first, I think. Jerry, art wise, like as you mentioned in that page 6, when he's in the boot, I think it's a really good design by Fullerton. He's got that real psycho look, and
Yeah,
I don't want to I don't want to reduce it to facial features because I don't want to offend anyone that has similar facial features. But he's just got this kind of really sneer on his face, and he's got exaggerated um, components. Like his ears are quite prominent,
right.
but he's got this. Yeah, he's got this almost like a Joker snarl to him.
Yeah, you can see the way his eyes,
Yep,
like
his eyes.
the space above the pupils, um, and the really wide toothy grin he has as he's pointing that gun up. Like he just looks so like gleeful in
Yes.
what he's doing right now, like surprising this young man, trying to kill him. It instantly tells you, yeah, it characterizes this character just
Mm.
perfectly. Like you know like what he's about as soon as you see him, and he doesn't even say anything.
Yeah, later on as well, he's very much. I guess you get the sense he's very much like either a sociopath or a psychopath in the fact not so much with Killian but with Kino. Like he has at least a working relationship and some kind of friendship with him, but that doesn't even matter to him at the end. You know, he kind of
Yeah.
offs Kino because no loose ends, he says, and it just shows a lack of emotion or any sort of attachment. So he's the easy one to kind of pick because he's really juicy in the fact that he's just really evil. I think.
Yeah, and I feel like he's just been in it so long.
Yeah,
He's older than all of them, and they mentioned this, that he's like older than all of them, and he's just like been in the game for so long, and you get that sense that like he could, I don't know if he could ever have the moments that Kino does where he knows he has a job to do, but he hesitates because he still has that sense of humanity and that connection to
yeah.
people, willing to give people chances. Um,
Mm.
yeah, he's like Jerry's just like he knows what he's about. You know, he's all in.
Yeah, and as you mentioned as well, it is true during this whole story, it's that kind of quirkiness and that it's almost black. It's like black comedy.
Yeah.
Like with Jerry, we see he kind of gets Killian dead to rights, and Neev dead to rights as well. But then he kind of slips and falls
Oh
backwards off the
gosh.
hill.
Yeah, I remember that moment. I had
It's
a guffaw like
yeah.
out loud as I was reading this by myself, just like, oh my god, like it was
Yeah,
so well timed and just so
it
funny.
was.
And I honestly I think Neve's response, if I remember correctly, I'm trying to kind of rifle through the
Oh yeah.
pages to find it, but her response afterwards is like, that's the most Irish thing I've ever seen. You
Yes.
know, and it's just
Yes.
like, that's so hilarious. So good.
Yeah, that must be where I picked it on from what Neve said, because there are very, for want of a better term, very Irish moments like that. There's another one where, and again, it's kind of really comedic, where Kino and Jerry are in the car and they're trying to stalk Killian, but Kino just realizes he's kept the
Oh, the
headlights on. Yeah,
headlights. Yeah.
yeah.
I
So,
yeah, that's I think the art really helps with that too, because you
mhm,
have the sort of classic wide panel at the top. And I say classic as in, like, I know Gavin Fullerton's the artist on this, but the panel
mhm.
layout just rings with a lot of Declan
Oh,
Shalvey's
oh,
style.
yes.
Yeah, and so
Hmm.
it suits the story so well. That wide panel shot with the car at the top, and then
Hmm.
you have like a 4-panel grid in the middle with Kino and Jerry just sitting there, and they have these
Yeah.
satisfied looks on their faces. Like, yeah, we're gonna get him. Absolutely, he's coming right to us. And then there's another panel of just no dialogue, them sitting there, and then immediately the last panel, the looks on their faces, just like, oh shit,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
like it's just so funny.
It's really cool. I want to shout out, of course, as well, the Rebecca Nalty. I think she's a colorist. Sorry.
Yes.
Yes. And because the colors really do sell it as well. I mean, not only the layout, but we see it throughout. Like here, this instance, this sequence, just the yellow, like sparingly used at the top panel, and then you've got the rear brake lights just lighting up the rear window. So you see that red, which is in between both Kino and Jerry as they kind of wait. Yeah, really good. So I think the colors really sparingly used because, as you say, it's mostly at night, but you do really see those colors pop when they are used, like the bright yellows. When headlights flash towards Kino and Jerry when they're in the car, that sort of stuff.
Oh yeah, and
Mm,
actually, on those taillights, if I recall correctly, the red is really used a lot from those taillights,
oh, it
almost
is.
exclusively when
Oh, you're right.
Jerry is up to his ways,
Mhm.
being violent, trying to kill someone, shooting at Killian, and you can see it if you like go towards the end
Mhm.
when he's
Oh,
walking up
yes.
to him with the gun, and Kino and Killian were standing in the back of Maureen's house, like
Mhm.
the near the cemetery. The red
Yes.
isn't there until he shows up, and then you can see the tail
Oh,
light as
very,
he's walking in, and it's always kind of splashing
very
against his
cool.
face.
Very
Um,
cool. Nice
yeah,
pickup.
and like you can see the following page where um, at the top, Kino is like, "Listen, Jer, hang on, let me try rigging the bish," and he's like, "No more talking, no more calling the boss." And you can see, even though Killian's standing right there, none of that red is hitting him. It's mostly on Jerry and a little on Kino as he's holding the shotgun. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's
I
a
thought.
great. Yep.
Sorry,
Sorry.
sorry. I just thought it was really
Then
well done. Really great
yeah,
use of color to tell the
I did.
story.
Yeah, I didn't notice that, but it makes so much sense. Like it really just kind of highlights Jerry. Red, evil. Gives him kind of a very, dare I say, like devilish demeanor. But it's so cool how that's like a running thread throughout the whole thing, and of course when um towards the end, as I say, when Jerry offs Kino, I mean that's all red as well. I mean
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
a, a big moment. I like how that was done as well. It was very subtle, like what happened, but if you look at those panels, you see Kino dragging Killian, and sorry, listeners, we are jumping to and from, so hopefully you've read it beforehand. So Kino is dragging Killian, and he puts him in the boot, and he's almost got this like fetal position when he's shoved in the boot. It's all in red, and then as he closes, or as he is about to close the boot of the car, I love it. There's just a spray of blood, which is from Kino, shot from behind, and then he's just kind of lit in red as he dies on the ground. But yeah, really great. I think the art and colors work so well together.
Oh, absolutely. I love with the inks, you can see just how bold some of the brushes are, particularly in like their facial features. For
Hmm.
example, like there's finer lines, sure, but a lot of the key features of the face with their eyebrows and noses, there's really some bold strokes, which I think shows a lot of it speaks to a lot of the kind of brutality and the starkness
Hmm.
of the
Yeah,
story.
absolutely.
Yeah, just really well done.
And yeah, the facial expressions. I mean, really, the style is a little bit more, I guess, stylized than obviously your typical comic book artist. But the expressions are all there, like really easily shown with it's quite good. Like Fullerton with not that much work on the face, you can tell straight away, whether someone's scared or apprehensive, or
Yeah,
just really deep in thought. So that's a good sign, I think, of an artist to be able to convey that just with the face. Um,
absolutely.
yeah, sticking or going on to, because we were talking about Jerry, like Kino. I think is another great character fleshed out in such a short span of time. As you mentioned, Sparky, he's reluctant. He has like sympathy at least for Killian, and we see many times throughout the story, even when he's talking to the bishop, that he wants to like try to skirt around this whole fact of actually offing Killian. It's like, can we just lose him in the bog? Maybe he'll kill himself there. Is that
Right.
okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, do we have to
Yeah.
do it? We could just let him go out. I mean, he's in the bog. It's gonna get him, you know.
Yeah. And even when he meets Killian towards the end, he gives him really just hands him the gun, going, "Oh, just take the gun." And Killian's like, "What?" um,
Yeah, yeah, just how he I feel like Kino, if it wasn't gonna happen now, it would certainly happen later, where he comes to a point where he's just done with
yeah.
this life, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it was just a really poignant scene, surrounded by the darkness of the bog and the quiet, uh, kind of crooked gravestones.
Yeah.
Yeah, just really a really wonderful scene. And you keep saying that it's like in just a short amount of time. It really is. It does feel like just a quick little story, just contained so tightly in this expansive space of the bog, and Maureen's house. And it felt like a I want to I don't want to say play, just because a play is normally even more
Mm.
contained, like on a stage, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But it had this sort of like contains a short story style, where there's so much packed in just a small amount of time, and there's a lot to chew on, and it just makes it so satisfying to go through this graphic novel. And again, like, when you finish it, you just want to go back and look through it again and just be like, wow, really, this whole time? Like, yeah, just
Yeah.
really impressive.
Yeah. It certainly is, and I think it's. I mean, maybe it's the actual duration or length of the novel, or maybe it's because I read it in like one sitting, which you can easily do. It's not like,
Oh yeah.
it's not like 12 issues of an arc or something. You certainly can go through it, but yeah, I mean, it is packed with a lot of stuff, and I think it's a testament to what Shalvey's able to do with the characters that actually um give this momentum, like this story, because the concept is pretty straightforward. Apart from some
Yeah.
twists and turns, it's about like this guy that has been targeted by the boss to be offed, and he just gets lost in the forest. And as you say, it's a play. Like, he finds a house, and there's only like five cast members.
Yeah.
It does have that quality, but there's so much in it. I think it was really, really cool. Even the fact that Maureen, or who they come across in their house, she's the mum of Kino. So
I think she's his aunt. If I
aunt, sorry,
yeah.
aunt, yes, our aunts. But yeah, but you with all this kind of thing like happening for Kino, I found he immediately becomes really accessible, and you become sympathetic or empathetic towards him because he's actually got some emotions, you know. Yeah, it makes him an interesting character, and all the more tragic toward the end as well, because it's not only Killian that gets killed. Kino's left for dead too. Like, he's left in the bog. I mean, he's part of the bog too.
Right,
Uh,
right. And I guess on that note, it might be fun to finally talk more plainly about what we've been kind of dancing around in terms of characters that are left in the bog. Neev.
Yeah, Neev. So what a weird character. When I first, because it's great. I mean, she accompanies Killian. He finds her deep in the bog. She's kind of scuffed up, hurt, but she has some ticker to her as well. She immediately calls him a pedo. you
I
know.
know
Yeah,
I was just kind of like, wow, this girl, like, here's this young man who finds her, she's lost and alone, and she's
yeah,
just like going into him, like, right from the bat, just giving him hell, which was just so funny. She had so much uh I don't know if I should call it just spunk. That doesn't seem strong enough. It's just like
Yeah.
real piss and vinegar, just
Yes. Oh,
just
that's even
really,
better.
yeah, she's just really laying into him. It's so funny. Just a lot of personality.
And I'm not too sure. I might be assuming, but yeah, she has that fire in the belly, which I think
Yeah.
a lot of Irish people have. So she's very passionate in that sense, and
Yeah.
that kind of it comes off like in how she treats Killian, and how she treats like what she thinks of Jerry and all that. She's like very kind of in your face in that sense. But the big twist, as you're saying, Sparky, and we get a sense of it slowly. And again, it's the red, like you were talking about Jerry with the red. I don't know if that's maybe I didn't notice it until later, but her red on her face starts to become more prominent.
Yeah, I feel like when you first see her, she seems to have some kind of like her eye is swollen,
Mm-hmm.
her left eye, and there's red on her face. So you're assuming like, oh, maybe she fell,
Yep.
hit her head or something. She's in trouble. And as you're going through the story, she's only speaking to Killian, really. It's just the two of them running away, trying to evade Kino and Jerry. And then, interestingly, as you've mentioned, Maureen's house, Maureen being like the elderly aunt of Kino, who clearly has some kind of dementia or something.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
When you see, she keeps talking about we. She says we a lot, as in like her and these guests that aren't there. But
Mm-hmm.
then in that full page panel, we see um, her say, "You won't hear a peep out of us." And in her home, there are these figures standing there, and they all, or mostly, a lot of them, seem to have that same kind of red spatter
Mm-hmm.
on their faces, a lot like Neev.
Mm-hmm.
And then immediately on the following page, you see her looking out. She's really the only other character that has been mentioning Neev, even, or like talking to her. And then you
Yep.
see these other figures standing in the cemetery, and you like Neev standing there, and she touches the wound on her face, and it's just like, oh my god, is that what I think it is? Like, is that what's going on? Like, it was just really
Yeah.
like, and at first, when I first read that, I really thought like, oh well, maybe like she can't see these, maybe these are ghosts or something,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and only Marine can see them, and Neve can't see that they're there, and maybe it's just they're connecting it somehow. It
Yeah.
wasn't really quite hitting me yet. It wasn't until later when Killian is finally killed, and he's laying
Yep.
on the ground, and you can see it's through his eye, and
Yes.
it echoes in the page there. It echoes the same kind of wound that Neve has in terms of her eye being closed. Um,
Mm.
and I thought it was interesting as you continue on. She's standing right there looking at Killian laying there dead, and Kino and Jerry don't even notice her, They don't even
Yes.
talk to her or look at her. There's no mention of her. Like, you'd think that they would know loose ends, right? Like, he would have to kill her too, but
Mm-hmm.
he doesn't. And I that's when I started to really feel like, is she even there?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. That it was at this point that I'm kind of going back, and what I did was I went back to when Killian and Neve were running, and it was that kind of what was it, like kind of like the sixth sense. I was like having to look to see if she actually interacted with Jerry or anyone at all, and it's like it's so well done that you kind of think that she is part of the whole scene, but she could easily not be,
Right,
and
absolutely.
and then looking back at the very first page, it talks about a missing girl, Neve Madigan. Uh, yeah, Madigan, a woman in her 20s. She disappeared. So that was, I went back to that going, okay, so my gosh, this is probably her, right? And
Oh yeah. Well, when
yeah,
I first read that panel, the news segment about the missing girl, and then I saw it when Killian meets her,
mhm,
I was like, oh, there she is. Like that's
there
Neev.
she
Like
is.
yeah. And I thought like, oh, he found her. Like she's been missing, and here she
Yeah,
is. But then at the end, it's heavily implied, obviously, that like,
yes.
oh, she's dead.
She's dead. Yeah, which is as such a. I mean, and again, looking back at the thing, I went back to Maureen and her first encounter, and because she sees Neve, and that's what kind of puts you off, because when they go to the house, she addresses Neve, and so you think, yeah, she's got to be alive, right? And until you find out later, because she said, "Oh, I remember you now. You must be frozen." So she's talking about Neve here.
Yeah.
So she's seen her before. She must have come to the house before once she died, and then she must have wandered out.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
thinking, and I don't know if you've considered this or if I'm making too many connections here, but the reason they're trying to kill Killian is because he grabbed the wrong girl, basically. He was meant to kill a certain girl. I think that even worked at the same place Neve did,
Mm-hmm.
um, and grabbed her instead and killed her.
Oh, okay.
He killed, like, that's the whole point. He killed the wrong person, and so they said, like, you killed a civilian. That was the wrong person,
Yes.
and that's why
Yeah.
he needs to be taken out. And I feel like he killed her,
Yep.
and they brought her body, as they do, to the bog, and
To the bog.
that's where Maureen saw her. And she even, at the end, Neve goes into the cemetery there and like lays down amongst the
Yes.
graves.
Oh,
Really great shot. And I'm kind of curious, like, does does he just not say anything? Does he know that she's not
yeah.
real? Like it's so many questions.
Ah, right. Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's a good point, because that it did come across my mind, but I did think, wouldn't he have recognized her? Like, wouldn't he be crapping his pants, going, "Oh my gosh,
Right.
what you doing here? Like, I just killed her." But there are so many questions. Like, he could have killed her and not really seen her face, or as you say, he could be accepting the fact that she's passed and he's running around with a ghost, because he's really um he sounds very defeated, Killian. Like, there's a whole monologue about him and I put him down as a character. He's totally luckless, and he's not the brightest as well. And he just is someone who's gotten the bad end of everything his whole life. So maybe that weighs part of it, why he probably recognize her and go, "Oh, stop it! I'm headed towards the bog myself. I'm headed towards
Yeah.
oblivion." Maybe.
I remember in the second read through, I went through it again, and I remember at first, the first time I read it, I was curious about this bit of dialogue, but I kind of just, there's so much going on in the dialogue that I just kind of passed it. Um, when he's talking to Kino in the cemetery before, or actually, I think, yeah, it's after Jerry has arrived.
Hmm.
Um, Killian asks, like, what if there was a way to fix all this? What if she wasn't
Yes.
dead at all?
Hmm.
And then Kino immediately responds with like, like, oh, anger, bargaining, the 5 stages of grief over here. Um,
Hmm.
and I got this sense the second time that's like, oh, I think that that's clearly him, or maybe not quite as clearly, but that seems to heavily imply that he was at least thinking about Neev, as in the girl who he killed,
Yeah.
that like maybe she's not dead because he's been with her this whole time. But I don't know if he really believes that.
Ah. Yeah.
I think that, again, as you said, I think that just might be an indication of him kind of coming to this point where he realizes that like he's coming to his end, and he
Mm.
has felt sort of this like desolate despair, and that's just him kind of reaching out in a way.
Yeah.
Any kind of chance, maybe, like, I don't know, it's just so, it is really ambiguous, but I feel like it
Hmm.
points to a lot of that kind of stuff that makes you think. And I love that idea of like, you read it and you're like, oh well, surely that means this, right? but you
Yeah.
can't really say 100% because it's so ambiguous. It leaves so much room for other
Yeah.
interpretations, which is really
Yeah.
fascinating.
I say this in the best possible way, but yeah, the way it's kind of framed, Shelby does it. He doesn't commit like to, and I say this in the best way, like he doesn't commit to anything. So it's everything is left. Everything's left for you to kind of put two and two together to kind of stitch it together, and I think that's one of the big strengths of this. I just really enjoyed it. It is worth like rereading and going through again, just trying to find these little. You've raised points that I didn't consider, and I think yes, that's really cool. Like a cool way of thinking about it, because I don't know about you. Did you ever expect Killian to die in this? I was hoping he'd get away,
Yeah,
but
I kind
yeah,
of feel yeah, you do want the main character often to survive, like he's the
hmm
hero of the story in a sense. Like you instinctively, I think we do want that happy ending, but
yeah.
there's something about this particular story. Um, I didn't know what to expect, and the way it ends, I really feel like it couldn't have been any other way.
Oh yeah, I totally agree as well. I'm not, definitely not saying that it should be written that he survives, but I guess it had even that more impact in that
Yeah.
it's like, oh gosh, this is such a dark thing, as you said. He doesn't make it, and Kino doesn't make it, and Neve's dead.
Yeah,
It's like
it's like
such a
the
such
only
a yeah.
person who makes it out is the one character that like you're kind of made to really fear and dislike the most.
Mm. And that's like the annoying thing, how like the bad guy kind of like gets away, but again,
Yeah.
annoying thing but so I love it. I love the way that it kind of does that, and it really, Bog Bodies really does manipulate your emotions and subvert your expectations. Truly, I mean, and
Absolutely.
I don't think it lessens any so on rereads. It's not like you read a mystery novel and you know who did it at the end, and it's not as fun anymore because you can kind of look back and you can theorize about what really was Killian thinking, like what really happened to Neev. Is there a connection between Neev and Killian? All that sort of stuff. It's
Right.
it's really good stuff. Uh, any final thoughts here, Sparky, before we give this a rating?
I think that this is one of those great stories that you can pick up, and I guess just to echo on the back, you can see a lot of the other creators who have left like reviews and have said things. Um, Jeff Lemire saying Bog Bodies is exactly the kind of comic I wish there were more of. I have the same sentiment towards it. It's
Hmm.
as he says, like grounded and deeply human, but also totally haunting. Um, and I agree. It's just one of those stories that's like, it's not just about a job gone wrong and a young man who's trying to escape these assailants. It's about so much more in terms of, I think, like our humanity and our fears, and just the cycle of life and history, particularly in a place like this Irish bog, um,
Hmm.
and like the history of the bog bodies themselves. It's just really, really well done. Um, yeah, I loved it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more as well. I think that on the surface level, what you get is like a crime noir thing, but there's just so much more to it with the characters, and I think the economy that Shelby brings to the characters and to develop them in a short space of time and in such a constrained environment, I think it was fantastic. And giving that kind of supernatural element as well. It's very much a street level thing, but just injecting just subtly that little supernatural element towards the end was really good.
Oh yeah, I
Um,
agree.
yeah. So, out of the Conishue's rating system, Sparky, what would you give this Bog Bodies from 2020?
Oh man, I gotta give it a full moon all the way.
Oh,
9 out of 10.
nice. So that is a full moon from Sparky Mularkey. I'm punching that into the archives now just for my records. So a full moon, 9 out of 10. Look, I'm going to give it a very solid 8 out of 10. I think it has way more strength than I'm about to say weakness, but I can't really fault much of it. It's great. It's just deliciously ambiguous, but it's intended to be so for you to kind of ruminate and work with what it is. So, yeah. So that's an 8 out of 10. I don't know what I take the 2 marks off, but I'll uh, I guess I'm treading carefully, Sparky. This is one of many other sides of the moon, so I just want to give myself some wiggle room. But 9 out of 10, absolutely.
Yeah, no, totally understandable.
Well, that pretty much wraps us for this episode. Sparky, a huge thank you for coming on. It's been such a pleasure to chat about Bog Bodies, to chat about a non-Moon Knight thing, but it is kind of because of Declan Shalvey. But thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it, and it was such a delight to talk to you.
Yeah, it's likewise as well. The door is open if ever you need to come back or want to come back to Grant Mansion. Please do so. I'll be happy to have you on board. So yeah, any shout outs that you'd like to give, Sparky? Can people contact you, find you on Twitter and such?
Oh, sure. Yeah, thank you. Yep, I'm Sparky Mularkey on Twitter and Instagram, just at Sparky Mularkey, no underscore or anything. And yeah, I talk a lot about comics and my life, and I'm always open to chatting and talking to other people about comics and their lives too.
Yes, Sparky is awesome. Go check her out on Twitter. Details in the show notes as well to make it a lot easier for you, Loonies. If you want to touch base with Sparky, chat more Declan Shalvey, chat more Bog Bodies. It's all up there, rife for speculation. A big next phase, episode 290. It is going to be another big one. It's a Moonshine. We have Moon Knight, Black, White, and Blood out, issue 2. So I believe a couple of the writers there will be Benjamin Percy and David Proposa. So go check that out. We'll be reviewing that hot off the press, hopefully shortly after it releases. So, yep, that'll be 290. I'll see if I can grab Rebecca. That'll be fun. Always fun to do that with her. As well, a big thank you to our patroonies. I want to give a shout out to Odin, Daniel, Drew, Frank, Justin, Derek, Kyle, Wayne, Jordan, Josh, Anthony, Russell, Michael, Mario, Gavin, and Matthew. And if you check out patreon.com/ITK Moon Knight, you too can become a Patreon member. A big apology to Odin Sword. Sorry, I had kind of tiered Odin to come up as well to join us, but was not able to make that happen. So hopefully, Odin, we can get you on for another show. Sponsors also CLZ Comics. Check out collectors.com. Check out Frank the Think Tank on Instagram, Moon Knight Visions with a Z. Daniel Dewing's Fringe Night. Support that at patreon.com/Fringe Night 27. And Drew Toombs, his fantastic music on SoundCloud, soundcloud.com/Toombs with a Z, or Lurk Music, and that's on Bandcamp, lurkmusic with a CK.bandcamp.com. And finally, Dreamland Comics, use the code MOON and you get 20% off. Fantastic stuff there. Finally, we are part of the collective, so many great shows there. EMP, Earth's Mightiest Podcast, I'm Your Target Demographic, that's on YouTube, and Inner Demons, a Ghost Rider podcast. All good stuff. Check out the link to all the collective shows. They're all worthwhile. Finally, you can email us at feedback@itkmoonnight.com. We've got a website, itkmoonnight.com. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Discord, Get Vocal, and Podchaser. And incidentally, any reviews will be greatly appreciated. Even bad ones, we like to learn how we can improve the show. Before I forget, of course, I just want to give a shout out to Declan Shalvey's other stuff, Sparky, and maybe some recommendations on your behalf. His Time Before Time, I'm reading, is fantastic. It's more sci-fi based, fantastic kind of weird time traveling shenanigans ensue. I'm only halfway through that, and I want to give a shout out to his upcoming Old Dog. Declan says he goes back to his roots. It's a lot more street level, a lot more violence, a lot more action. I can't wait for that. But do you have any other recommendations, Sparky?
Oh, yes. You mentioned Time Before Time. Yeah, lots of fun time hopping shenanigans. I'm also very excited for Old Dog. I've been kind of following any sort of tidbits that we've been shown. It looks really good. I also have to say that I really enjoyed Savage Town, which again
Yes.
is a graphic novel by Declan that has a lot of that sort of like authentic Irish storytelling characters. Really good, and I was really blown away by how much I loved his Marvel Infinity comic special with Banshee that
Oh,
he
wow.
released. I think it was actually this last St. Patrick's Day around that time. It was like on the I think it's just on the Marvel Infinity or the Unlimited app right now. Marvel Unlimited, but there was this Infinity comic, and of course those are the ones where you just kind of like keep scrolling. It's not in that sort of traditional comic format. And it was like admittedly I'm not big on X-Men in terms of like I don't read a lot of X-Men, but I am familiar with the characters. Just like working at a comic book shop, you kind of have to be. And I was like, okay, it's by Deck. Let me check it out. It was, despite like the having all the colorful trappings of an X-Men character. I mean, Banshee's costume is really loud, like which is fitting for the character, of course. But it had so much heart. I actually
Right.
had moments where I was like, oh, like this is really touching, and I'm even
Cool.
getting a little misty-eyed. Like this is such a great story.
Wow.
Yeah, I was really surprised by that. So if any of you have the Marvel Unlimited app, definitely check it out.
A great recommendation there. I'm going to go check it out as well. I love Banshee, Sean Cassidy. I think it's been criminal that he hasn't. Yeah, he's back now, but he'd been absent for a long time.
Yeah.
Wow. But yeah, worth checking out for sure. So, listeners, again, I'll list all of these in the show notes. Go check it out. Let Declan know what you think of all his work as well. He's on Twitter. I'll drop a Twitter account of his there as well. But once again, a huge thank you for joining us. And Sparky, I hope you get some rest, well-earned rest.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
No worries. And as always, may Khonshu watch over the denizens of the night. Catch you later.
Moon Knight and affiliated characters, stories and events are properties of Marvel Characters Incorporated. Materials used and discussed within the podcast are intended for critique and review purposes only under the fair dealing concept of the current Copyright Act. The views, information or opinions expressed during the podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of the copyright owners.
Hey everyone, this is Brian, the host of Inner Demons, the Ghost Rider podcast. And since 2017, Inner Demons has been the best place on the web for news, reviews, and regular discussion with our listeners about Marvel's Spirit of Vengeance, Ghost Rider. You can find us on Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and many other podcast catchers, as well as on Twitter at InnerDemonsGR. Remember, listening to your inner demons is not always a bad thing. Ride on.